Hello, and welcome back to our next episode of Unbroken Arrows. I'm Greg.
And I'm Catherine. And today we have Bob St. Pierre, who is the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer for Pheasants Forever. Bob is also the host of On the Wing podcast and a co-host of Fan Outdoors on KFAN Radio. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. I'm flattered and looking forward to our conversation.
Well, thanks, Bob, and please feel free to elaborate as we talk through some of these things in your position as with Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. We're always looking to gain tips and pointers, so please, if you feel the urge to help us out, we'll appreciate that.
No problem. I don't have any hesitation about telling stories.
Well,
perfect.
So one of the things I wanted to start off with is your Rooster Road Trip series that is part of your Pheasants Forever. And one of the things that I did note, I am a native Nebraskan, and in one of I don't think it was the most recent one, because I think you were in Nebraska during the most recent road trip, if that's correct. Number 14, was that the 14th?
Yep. Yeah, we were in Nebraska for the final couple of days this season. Yep.
Correct. But you were there before a few years back. And I can remember the title of the episode that I watched, the YouTube video. You mentioned that Nebraska never disappoints.
Yep. There's a lot of truth in that statement. Nebraska never has disappointed me.
And that's great to hear. But wondering if there doesn't need to be a little bit of an asterisk by that, just because I grew up in northeast Nebraska, and I grew up in that late to middle 70s era. The hunting was pretty good, maybe the heyday of northeast Nebraska hunting anyway. And my brother and I hunted a lot, and we would get out in the morning, which is something different. I haven't done a whole lot of hunting yet in pheasant hunting in South Dakota, but they start kind of late in the day compared to what I'm used to.
We like to sleep in.
Sleep in. Is that what it is?
I actually heard kind of side story, not related to what we're talking about, but someone told me that they started at 10 so that the farmers have time to finish chores and then can still go hunting. I don't know if that's true or like the origin of it and if they just kept it, but that's what I've always been told.
Well, what I heard was that was so the hunters could maybe stay out a little bit later at night and then get up and have breakfast. And
that one sounds
so
true
Bob,
too.
which one have you heard?
Yeah, I think there's truth in both statements. It is a very interesting conversation because you think about, so North Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, 3 states that come to mind where you can actually start pheasant hunting 30 minutes before sunrise, which to me is preposterous because you can't even tell, what the, if it's a rooster or a hen. And then you look at Iowa, you can start at 8 a.m. Minnesota, you can start at 9 a.m. South Dakota is 10 a.m. It used to be noon for opening week, but they changed that about 4 years ago. So I think there's elements to both what you've heard in terms of it allowed farmers to do chores in the morning. I think there's also truth in the late start in allowing local watering holes to sell a little bit, a few more mugs of suds in the evenings and breakfasts in the morning. So it's an economic driver. But ultimately it comes down to sort of cultural norms. There's really, not a lot of biological purpose behind the start time. I think those are more societal choices. But it's very interesting when you start looking at different states and what they've selected as start times.
Sure. In back to the Rooster Road Trip and my question to you about pheasant numbers. But as I was saying, in the 70s, 80s, I felt, and this again is my personal observation, so I'm not going to use historical data here, but we had good numbers of pheasants. And then in the 90s, I really noted a decline. And then in between the present, I guess, and in that time, I didn't hardly see any pheasants whatsoever. And quail the same way. When during that time when I was growing up, you ran into coveys of quail all the time. Now, recently, I bought a UTV. I bought a Kawasaki Mule a few years back and spent a lot of time driving the country roads in northeast Nebraska. And just my observation again, I have seen increased numbers of pheasant and quail over the last couple of years. But what are some of the factors that led to, I guess, in my words, such a rapid decline of numbers?
Yeah. Well, I don't think your observations are incorrect at all. I mean, if you think about land use changes over the last 40 years, it's been dramatic all across the country, whether we're talking about Nebraska, South Dakota, Minnesota, Texas, or maybe the poster child that comes to mind for me is Iowa. Iowa used to be a 2 million bird a year harvest, million bird year harvest for a long time. Now it's down to, 200,000, 250,000 pheasants, roosters a year in Iowa. And it is all about land use changes, and that's true of Nebraska as well. I think just in the period of time that I've been working at Pheasants Forever, which is 21 years, I would mark 2006, 2007, 2008, that 3-year window as the high water mark of our generation for bird numbers, and that directly correlates to the Federal Conservation Reserve Program, or CRP. CRP in '07 had roughly 36 million acres enrolled, and that's the crown jewel of habitat conservation programs, particularly for the ringneck pheasant in the upper Great Plains. And, and we had 36 million acres roughly in '06, '07, and that's when South Dakota set a 60-year, I guess it was a 40-year high in South Dakota. It was a 40-year high I think in Nebraska, a 60-year high in Minnesota. Since that time, CRP has tumbled. We're at roughly 24 million acres in CRP right now. So you got 12 million acres of habitat difference between 2024 and 2007. And it's pretty easy to see the dramatic decline in acres has led to a dramatic decline in bird numbers. The other thing, excuse me, is think about land use changes. Nebraska is a big state, particularly east to west, and land use changes, particularly farming and ranching, has changed a lot since you were there in the 70s, particularly on the eastern side of the state. Majority of my bird hunting in Nebraska has been focused kind of Holdridge, McLeod, that southwest corner on public lands through what is another crown jewel of habitat conservation and access, and that's Nebraska's Open Fields and Waters program, which is a program that pays private landowners to open up their land for public access. And it is in Nebraska, it also incentivizes those landowners to create even better habitat. And when I say Nebraska never disappoints, it's I've been fortunate enough to be able to pick out some just beautifully manicured pieces of private land that have been opened up for public access, and the habitat's been just terrific in that southwest corner of the state. And as long as there's been some times where the drought in recent years has really put a stranglehold on bird numbers in Nebraska. Outside of that, it's been lights out. It's been one of my favorite states to hunt.
Well, my perfect hunt occurred in southwest Nebraska. I was a middle school principal in a town called Ogallala, and just to don't mean to throw you under the bus here, Bob, but if we have people from Nebraska, were you referring to McCook, not McLeod, Nebraska?
Oh yeah, I would. Did I say McLeod?
You said
my
McLeod,
apologies.
and I don't want the Cornhusker fan faithful to be sending you emails or things like that.
No, I did mean McLeod. I normally screw up
McCook,
the pronunciation of McCook. I normally screw up Kearney versus Kearney.
Right?
McCook. I keep saying McLeod because there's a county in western Minnesota, McLeod, and I must be having a brain fart there. But McCook.
No apologies necessary. But this hunt that I took place, it would have been that 2007-2008 time frame, and the middle school principal, that was me, and the high school principal and the elementary principal and 5 others went out on some of the open field area. The high school principal staked it out like about 3:30 in the morning, but we made 2 passes in the field, and we had our limit by like 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, which I had never experienced even in the heydays in northeast Nebraska. So that was a great place. And yes, that's southwestern Nebraska. This was in Perkins County, actually, by Grant, and that's where we were at. So
I can attest to that, like 2007, 2008 range. I obviously was like 5 or 6 years old, so I wasn't hunting it. Well, I was there, but I don't have memories from it. But the group that I've hunted with my entire life, they have a old whiteboard in the shed that is kind of like the home base. And from about, I want to say it was like 2003, 2004 to like maybe 2012, they kept a chart of all of the times that they hunted, how many people were there, how many birds they shot. And that, like I said, 2007, 2008 was just lights out. They got limits pretty much every day, no matter how many people they had. And at the time, South Dakota had a limit of 20 people per group. But like, that's kind of I don't know the word, not scientific data, but.
And, what they say about wild birds make a bird dog, it couldn't have been a better time to have a young pup and learning the ropes. And I remember that vividly and have tremendous memories. And it wasn't that long ago. It gives me hope that if we can just fix the farm bill a bit, make CRP a little bit more lucrative priority for the private landowner and a priority for folks in Washington, D.C. I firmly believe we can get those acres back and bird numbers can rise again.
I got another question about that Rooster Road trip. I noted that most of you guys were shooting over-unders. Is there a reason for that, or is it just a personal preference?
So it's a little bit of a combination of both. So Browning Shotguns is our sponsor, and they make certainly semi-autos, over-unders, pumps, you name it. But so we get to look at their inventory and pick what appeals to us. And when you take a look at that Browning lineup of shotguns, the crown jewel of Browning bird hunting guns is a Satori. It's a classic over and under. You can crack it over your shoulder and, tighten a dog's collar or, pet a dog on the head and grab a rooster. So I have, since I kind of evolved from a pump shotgun guy, I started carrying over-unders, and I just personally prefer them. They very little can go wrong. Like in a semi-auto action, you can deal with different things because of jam ups and bad weather. And I just think, give me the crown jewel, give me a Browning Satori. And apparently the rest of our crew felt similar.
I will have to say that the most recent On the Wing podcast, you did take a little bit of verbal abuse with regard to being an out-stater and being thanked for bringing those over and unders.
Probably what you're going to say, Catherine. I give up 3 extra shots by carrying an over-under. So as a native South Dakotan, I'm guessing, Catherine, you carry a semi-auto.
I do, and I've got a 8-shot extension on mine, I think. So I say
Well,
most of the
you.
guys in our group have some sort of extension, which is funny because once you shoot 5 or 6 times at one bird, it's like, well, I might as just unload my gun at it. So you just keep shooting. Gets expensive. I'm sure your trips are less expensive than mine.
I do think there was a mentality when I was switching over to a over-under, and I exclusively use over-under. I do own a side-by-side, but it's essentially the same thing, 2 shells.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that I concentrate with purpose on the first shot, and then I know if I miss that first shot, I've got to be dialed in on the second shot because there ain't going to be a third. My right arm isn't as strong as I once was to throw a fastball. So it's I got 2 barrels.
That's awesome.
Well,
I started with an over-under, and that was the reason. Is they were like, you're going to focus, you're only going to get 2 shots, so you better make them count.
Well, I primarily use a single shot, so I figure the bird has actually a better chance of living than I do of having it fall. So we are coming up, let's see, it's the 1st of March is Pheasant Fest and the Quail Classic, and that is going to be in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, our hometown right now. And so we're excited for that. And what can a person get from attending that particular conference and really from all areas, maybe somebody that's beginning or just curious about getting involved, or even someone that I would say I'm a novice hunter, not a very experienced, but you're going to have experts there too. So what can a person look to get from attending Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic?
Yeah, thanks for providing me an opportunity to talk about our largest event. It's really our Super Bowl for upland habitat conservation. And, I guess the very first thing that's really special and unique and for the first time ever going to happen this year in Sioux Falls is our Concert for Conservation, which happens on Thursday, February 29th, which is Leap Day.
I have my tickets already.
Outstanding. That's wonderful. We couldn't be more thrilled. It's sort of a dream that we've had for a while to put together a concert leading into Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic. And, it's been pretty expensive to source bands over the years that we just haven't had the right opportunity until this year. And our friends at Trampled by Turtles, Minnesota-based band that we've been fortunate enough to collaborate with over the last couple of years on membership promotions and become really good friends with the lead singer-songwriter Dave Simonette. And they have joined forces with us to do a fundraising concert at the Washington Pavilion in Sioux Falls. It seats about just shy of 1,900 people. And as we record this on January 19th, we're down to about 300 tickets left. So in the concert world, we have a low ticket alert. So if you're hearing this, don't wait very long. You can go to pheasantsforever.org/trampled by turtles, the band's name, and it'll take you right to the ticketing page, and you can take a look at what's left. But that is a fundraising concert for our wildlife habitat mission, which rolls right into National Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic, which will be taking place at the Denny Sanford Premier Center, convention center connected to 2 different arenas in Sioux Falls. It's a giant expo. If on one level, it's a sports show. On another level, it's the world's largest banquet. It's the second largest dog event in the country next to the Westminster Dog Show. It's a farm show with tractors and seed drills. You hear National Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic, and you probably think, well, Blazorn, shotguns, and rednecks. And we definitely have our Sure, shotguns, blaze orange, and yeah, there's a few rednecks there too. But it's wild game cooking, it's artwork, it's painters, wood carvers, sculptors. The whole thing kicks off with a bird dog parade at 11 o'clock on Friday, March 1st. Leads right to the front gates where we do the ribbon cutting, and then for 3 straight days, it's the world's greatest sport show, dog show, farm show, craft show on the planet. And it's just a tremendous amount of energy focused on kind of a lifestyle that we all love. And one of the really, really cool thing, we're a nonprofit conservation organization. Our mission is creating wildlife habitat. And so this sport show, quote unquote sport show, 3 days, our biologists will meet with landowners from all over the country. If you own land in Nebraska or you own land in Washington State or Delaware, you can sit down at a computer with our biologists in the habitat help area, and we can pull a satellite image up of your property, and our biologists can talk you through your property and what state or federal programs like CRP that you might qualify for and might be able to do habitat work on. What's so magical about that is, we're not just coming to town, talking on stages, raising some money and leaving back for St. Paul, Minnesota. This 3-day event is going to leave a lasting impact in the form of better wildlife habitat and public access on the landscape of South Dakota through the result of a sport show, which to me is, it just tells the story of why we exist. And, there's no other sport show or 3-day event on the planet that can create public access and better wildlife habitat over the course of 3 days. I just think it's just a magical experience.
Well, we're glad that it's going to be in Sioux Falls.
Yeah, we're super excited. My brother actually is the hunting manager here at Shields in Sioux Falls, and I work part-time at Shields, so we both actually got the opportunity to work the Shields booth this year, so we will get to be there and talking to people, and I've never been, so I'm super excited.
Well, you'll be front and center because our partners at Shields, they do our store. All our merchandise is sold through Shields, and they're just tremendous partners of our organization. So I'm excited to meet you in person at the Shields booth in the show floor. That'll be very fun.
Yeah, no kidding.
She'll have her status at Shields rise when Bob St. Pierre comes and introduces himself to.
Yep.
Oh, it'll be fun. It'll be very fun. I'm thrilled to hear you'll be working at the event. You'll have a great time. It really, we have a youth village for kids. We have a women on the wing brunch on Sunday afternoon. Like I said, there's a dog parade. There's a national banquet with Donnie Vincent as our keynote speaker on Saturday night. Hopefully folks in Sioux Falls feel like, the Super Bowl is coming to Sioux Falls, not Las Vegas this year.
I think so. I've heard a lot of talk just around town about it. So now the Trampled by Turtles concert, because through your interview and your time that you've visited with Dave Simonette, and I think that led to maybe a pheasant hunt. Do I understand the story right that he did hunt big game, but he'd never pheasant hunted. So you and Billy, I think, arranged that, and that's kind of where that all started. From that, me learning of Trampled by Turtles that way, I am a huge fan of their music. So, but I've got to share a story with you with regard to K-Fan. When we were living in Ogallala, my brother Terry and his wife Rita they came to visit and were staying with us, and Saturday morning at 5 a.m., because that's mountain time, I used iHeartRadio to tune in to K-Fan and listen to Fan Outdoors, and I was listening to it in bed before I got up. And then, I was just actually waiting for the coffee to be brewed, set the timer on the coffee pot, So my brother Terry's an early riser too. So anyway, we went out and poured our coffee and went out to the deck, and Terry says to me, he says, Greg, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I think I'm sure I heard loons this morning. And of course, those that know the intro the show open is exactly right. And I had to laugh, and that was the beginning of I showed him. I found one of the podcasts and had him listen to the intro, and then I showed him how to get K-Fan through iHeartRadio and through word of mouth. At least I've got 5 faithful listeners to my credit. My other brother Pete, and then my 3 sons are listeners as well. So.
Oh wow! How did you find an outdoors show based in Minnesota when you're in Nebraska?
Well, I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan.
Okay, all right.
And Catherine's a Chicago Bears fan, so
you don't have to make fun of me for it. I already know.
But
and I'm wearing my Detroit Lions hat today.
Well, that's okay. I'm rooting for the Lions to get to the Super Bowl. I hope they do.
Someone's got to have hope.
Oh boy. But I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan, and I can't remember if it was advertised through that, or if I was could have been maybe through a tie through Cornhusker football, also playing the Gophers. And I just truly by accident came across it. And I really enjoyed it. And listening to you and Billy Hildebrand from the first time, I sensed that, there's a true friendship between the two of you. And my brother Terry often refers to, he enjoys listening to you two and your banter, kind of like listening to the guys in the coffee shop. So that's maybe one of the biggest compliments that I can give to the both of you, is that, that's kind of, from my perspective, that's what it is. But does your friendship with Billy predate K-Fan, or was that something that developed since your time on the radio?
Yes. Well, it's very flattering to hear your story. That means a lot, so I think I've been waking up at 4:10 every Saturday morning for almost 13 years now.
That's like my worst nightmare.
I know. Let me tell you, it's been there's been times when I question what am I doing, because I don't get paid for it. It is purely. It's something I enjoy, and you're right about the friendship I have with Billy. We're kind of like brothers. There's a little age difference there, but feels like my older brother. And it's just a tremendous friendship and a relationship that I cherish. We became friends a couple of years before K-Fan. I worked in minor league baseball before I started working at Pheasants Forever, and it led me to. So I did a lot of radio interviews on K-Fan. So the program director knew me. Billy was the host of the Thursday night show, and the Saturday morning show was somebody else. And Billy and I became friends. We were doing a little bit of bird hunting just as I got going at Pheasants Forever. And then the Saturday show opened up when another guy departed as the host, and Billy was tapped to host it, but he said, I want to bring in a different co-host. And that's where my name came up as a co-host. So we were friends a little bit before that, but then obviously the relationship, the friendship galvanized when we spent every Saturday morning at 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. together on the air. So it's really flattering to hear stories. You're listening in Nebraska. There's the upland quail biologist, the upland bird biologist in the state of South Carolina, listens every Saturday morning, particularly in the winter, because he just likes listening to ice fishing talk and us talking about cross-country skiing. I'm like, you live in South Carolina, you're never going to be able to ice fish. And he said that's why I like to listen. I like hearing about ice fishing. So it's real flattering to hear stories like yours.
Sure. Well, I've learned a lot from Fan Outdoors. Tommy George, I think, is when his talks about lures and presentation And as a former biology teacher, Stan Tequila's insights are always interesting too. And I could go on with other gifts that you have. But Bob, I can't transition away from talking about Fan Outdoors without asking Bob St. Pierre how his go-to fishing combination of a pink jig head and a white twister tail came to be.
Oh, yeah. And that's a K-Fan thing that I talk about pretty much every week.
Yep.
And it wasn't a lure that I grew up with, but it is a lure that, I don't know, probably the last 20 years, when I really probably when I got my first boat as an adult and started fishing, right as soon as the ice went out, I'd start with that pink jig and white twister tail on crappies. It's probably best among anything on crappies. And then as the seasons progressed, I would catch everything on it. One year we went up, we did a show in Ely, Minnesota, which is right on the edge of the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. And it was the fishing opener show, but Billy had to get back to his cabin in Sauk Center. So we got done with the show, and I left that show in Ely and started going from lake to lake, just driving, because I didn't have a watercraft. Billy had everything. So I fished from shore with that pink jig and white twister tail on my way home, and I caught a smallmouth bass, a largemouth bass, a northern pike. I caught, swear to God, a 50-inch muskie from shore. I caught a rainbow trout. I mean, it was like unbelievable. I drove like 150 miles and I caught darn near every species driving home at different boat launches. So it just was, and it's just one of those lures that almost never fails me. So if you haven't tried a white twister tail and a pink jig, go buy one for your tackle box.
Well, I have, and we have a family cabin that's been in my mom's side of the family for 90 years. It's north of Park Rapids, and I did use the pink jig head and a twister tail, and on the first cast I caught a northern. Since then, Bob, nil.
So you're saying I'm a better bird hunter than I am a fisherman?
No, I'm just saying that you're confident in it, and I think my confidence lacks. So, no, I think that's some of the, like I said, some of the banter between you and Billy are fun. It's fun to listen to, and that pink jig head and white twister tail always comes up. So.
Yeah, it does.
So one of our goals with our Unbroken Arrows podcast is to try to encourage those really of any age that have an interest to become more active in the outdoors, to explore the variety of options available to them to do so, from bird watching to hunting and everything in between. But we also have talked about limiting factors, and by no means are we suggesting that somebody goes from the couch to hunting prairie chickens, as that's a pretty rigorous hunt. Or even purchasing a pickleball racket and starting up, to play pickleball can be awful rigorous too. So you have to take into consideration what is best based upon your health, and sometimes that would include talking to a healthcare professional for advice about whether or not an activity is well suited for you. But with that being said, you've shared with your listeners that you do have diabetes. And how do you manage that and still do the things you do? Because it's just not upland bird hunting. You cross-country ski and canoe and hike and all those things. So
yeah, so I at 26 years old was diagnosed with adult onset of juvenile diabetes. So diabetes has type 1 and type 2. Type 2 is generally controlled with diet and exercise. Type 1, which I have, is insulin dependent. My pancreas just simply doesn't create insulin anymore. So I have a insulin pump on my belt and a little tubing that has insulin in a vial, and it's constantly dripping insulin through a subcutaneous plastic needle that I change out every 3 days.
Okay.
It's mimicking my pancreas, and it's dripping insulin in. And if I need more, I dial it up, and if I need less, I turn it off. But it's basically like, I don't know. I kind of think of myself as RoboCop. I've got a little something keeping me alive, and it's always, every morning I roll over on it and take it off when I get in the shower, and it's a reminder that life is short and nothing is guaranteed. And that to me reinforces every single day why I come to work at Pheasants Forever, because I'm able to make a difference through habitat conservation, something that is incredibly meaningful to me on a very personal level. I get to do something that it fits what I care about, and I can have a lasting impact. And it's not all candy canes and roses. I've got a real serious health condition that I've got to monitor every minute of every day. And bird hunting and cross country skiing and hiking and all of that challenges it. It's very good to be do as much exercise as I do, and be physically fit and stay active, because what diabetes does is it puts stress on your organs and on your heart, and leads to heart disease and stroke. And if I were obese or lethargic, it would cause additional problems having diabetes. So being able to be active helps reduce some of the risks. But because I'm insulin dependent, in hunting is so rigorous, I have to be very mindful about, I just can't leave the truck with a shotgun and a dog and be out for 4 hours. I have to have sugar with me. I have to know where my blood sugar is at. One of the scariest things that ever happened to me related to my diabetes and hunting is, I press it pretty hard. And one winter a few years ago, it was, I don't know, 10, 12 below out. And I normally carry Gatorade as my sugar while I'm hunting. If I'm drinking Gatorade throughout the day, I can keep my blood sugar up and not have any issues, because the fear is going basically below 80. That's kind of the magic number that, like, if you're non-diabetic, your blood sugar's at 80, 84. Mine rides a little bit higher because I can't keep it just perfectly level. But the danger is your number going below that 80, because you can slip into a coma and die, and exercise drives that number down. Well, when you're hunting, you're just driving that number down, 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 down. So I normally drink Gatorade or grape juice or eat fruit snacks, just trying to keep it up for the amount of carbs that I'm burning and driving my blood sugar down. Well, I was out for a hunt in super cold weather, which I was fine. I mean, I grew up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I can handle the cold. I wear the right wool layers and get moving, and temperatures are not that big a deal. But I got like 3 miles away from the truck, and I went to drink my Gatorade, and it was frozen solid. And that was my sugar source. And, that was probably the most nervous I've ever been with the diabetes, where I had to just hustle back to the truck and get other sugar source that wasn't frozen. But it is one of those things where, you just constantly have to monitor whether I'm skiing, hiking, hunting, going in to do radio. I don't want to bottom out blood sugar wise when I'm talking on the air, and you could sound like an idiot real quickly when your blood sugar isn't in the right place. So, or doing a podcast or going into a meeting or public speaking. So it's something that hasn't stopped me. It's sort of fueled me to achieve achieve success in spite of it. But I can't put it away. It's constantly top of mind.
And then do you, like those that you hunt with, do you educate those that you're with and say them, okay, if this starts to happen, or this is how you can help me?
Yeah. Definitely. Like, I think about Rooster Road Trip. Everybody that's in that trip with me definitely knows. All my friends know. If I'm in a scenario with complete strangers, I will definitely tell them, what's going on. I'm very, very aggressive. If I'm not feeling good, I break open the shotgun, and I never put myself into a situation where my blood sugar is low and I've got a firearm in my hand. I mean, that's a recipe for bad situation. So I am very diligent about monitoring it. One of my great joys in life is hunting alone, just me and the dogs. And it doesn't make my wife, Meredith, particularly happy all the time that I will hunt alone. I mean, I'll go into the boundary waters without cell coverage, or any sort of way of asking for help. But the reality is, if I need help in blood sugar, there's nobody that's going to be able to help me. I got to take care of myself, and that means having the forethought to be prepared. So, long-winded answer to your question. I let people know, but ultimately, it's personal accountability, and I try to be very diligent about making sure I'm not in a situation where, I've forgotten to do something that's going to put me at risk.
You mentioned diet is also something that is part of that. And, some people that hunt and fish take what I call, I guess, is a public relations approach, meaning they offer up their harvest or catch to others to enjoy on their table. But numerous times I've heard you mention, and I've actually heard you take some verbal joust for it too, because you're making plans as to how you're going to prepare your intended target maybe before it's hitting the ground. So is it fair to say that one of the reasons you hunt and fish is that you enjoy how to prepare your targets?
Yeah, 100%. That the completion of the hunt with a meal on the plate is as important as the dog training and the clay rounds of clay practicing. That meal is incredibly important to me. And one of my pet peeves is people that refer to hunting as a sport. I mean, there's nobody keeping score, winning and losing. I mean, to me, hunting is part of my lifestyle. It's part of my identity, and that includes the food. So yeah, when I put a little bit of label, a little more than just pheasant breast, when I put a bird in a freezer bag into the freezer, pheasant, point, Padua, November snowstorm. I'll put location. So when I pull that particular piece of meat out of the freezer, it's not just a meal, it's a memory. I can remember exactly the sequence, what the dog was doing, what the sun was like, or the sky was like on that day. And I can relive it through, the final completion of a meal. And, I just don't understand people that will breast out a pheasant and not eat the legs, or, kind of turn their nose up at a sharp tail. It's like, if you don't love it, why are you doing it? I mean, this is such an important component of it. And I do absolutely love wild game. It's healthy, it's tasty, and it's all part of the mix.
I'm really glad you shared that, because that is something, again, our podcast, Healing Through the Hunt. And one of the things that we are doing, we're creating memories. We're creating more memories to go with the memories that we have. And that is an excellent way of reliving that, and even the conversation during the preparation phase of things. So, well,
I'm really lucky because I despise cooking. But I love wild game. But Greg is a phenomenal cook, and then my boyfriend Nate is a phenomenal cook as well, especially when it comes to wild game. So I don't ever have to worry about that. But I wish, as one of those things, like as a hunter, I wish I was better at it. It's not even just that I don't like to cook. I am just so bad at cooking.
Well, I would wager you'll get better over time.
Well, she's pretty good at making pizza rolls at this point.
You can give me more credit than that. I make tacos and I make spaghetti, and that's about as far as my cooking knowledge goes.
She does a great job making goose jerky, though.
Oh, I do goose jerky.
But take tacos, take spaghetti, take pizza, and substitute wild game for the ingredients you're used to. And I mean, you can make some absolutely spectacular pizza. What I've done is you pre-cook the pheasant, and you use pheasant and take the pits out of cherries and use cherries instead of fresh tomatoes. So a pheasant, cherries, and pesto and some mozzarella cheese, and you make a pizza out of it. And I do the same, blueberries and rough grouse. And I'm sure listeners scratching their head this guy sounds a little bit of a wacko. I swear it's terrific. Or even simplify, get a pack of taco seasoning and cube up your pheasant and just replace what you would normally use, chicken or ground beef, and use pheasant. And you'll be surprised. And that'll ease your way into testing different things. But wild game cooking isn't as intimidating as maybe it appears to be.
It really isn't. No, you just have to try, and you can do a lot of reading, and there's a lot of helpful hints, whether it's YouTube or cookbooks or listening to other podcasts as well. But yes, it's not as intimidating. You were talking about using the pheasant as a substitute for the meat at tacos. We've done that with turkey legs, and I found a way to use the pressure cooker, the Instant Pot, to prepare the turkey legs that way, and that's something sometimes people don't even keep those. And there's a lot of good meat there. Right. So.
Yep. Crock pot can be your wild game cook's best friend.
Absolutely. One of our points of emphasis with our podcast is also, you just mentioned the mental health aspect of things. And again, I want to remind anybody that's listening, this time of year is tough sometimes. It's the winter doldrums. So if you are in crisis or thinking of suicide, please dial 988, and there are resources there available for you. And we ask that you take the time to try to get help, because the world is a better place with you in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to join both of you, hear your story, allow me to share mine. I love what you're doing. I think healing through the outdoors is very natural. It's an organic way, whether it's diabetes, just finding help in a challenging world mentally. There's a lot of wonderful things that can happen when you follow a dog into a field. And it's the place that I feel most at home. So I really appreciate the opportunity to share my story. And I'm absolutely flattered to hear people in Nebraska and South Dakota listening to KFan, because they enjoy me and Billy give each other a little bit of grief in the name of friendship. That's very flattering.
And we learn some things along the way as well. So to all our listeners, please take some time to get outside, get outdoors, and experience its healing powers. With that, until next time.
Greg's trying to figure out which button he has to push to stop recording. It's not that one.
This might be edited out.
It's the stop one.